In today's exercise, you are going to replicate this map of the Eagle Lake Maine Public Reserve land from start to finish. You can see we are 8 miles from Fort Kent from the top of this map. Proceed down on Route 11, turn on Old Main Street, and access the public boat launch here to access Eagle Lake Maine Public Reserve land. You can access through this thoroughfare to Square Lake as well, and onwards to Cross, Mud, and Long. You also see Winterville Plantation, Maine Public Reserve land down here in the bottom left corner. So I'm going to show you step by step how to create everything on this map. You are going to follow along precisely this time. There's no interpretation of what else. And at the end you are going to export this as a PDF, and then you're going to pick another section of Maine Public Reserve land. There are many. And this data set includes all of the boat launches in the state of Maine, so you're going to pick another lake and create a map for that one as well. So you're going to follow along with my demonstration and then go one step farther yourself. So let's get this out of the way and go from scratch. So the start menu, type in ArcMap. ArcMap 10.6.1. That'll load in, and you'll be left with a totally blank screen with no map data, no nothing to work with at all. Initializing application. Go, go, go. You can do it. Loading. Almost there. So close. There we go. So you'll get this getting started document where I have all these other maps I've been working on. You can just hit cancel and that will open up a blank map document like so with nothing in it whatsoever. If you go to your Windows Explorer here, you can right click File Explorer and then proceed to your desktop and open up the Student Materials folder and access datasets for student use. And you want the NAEP, National Agriculture Imagery Program 2018 True Color. And you want that for Aroostook County. And you can just drag and drop the .sid, that's the huge one, 7 gigabytes, drag and drop right into your table of contents. And then you can go back to your data sets for student use, FOR 100, lab number 2. And all of this data, what you can actually do is just select everything by select one at the top or the bottom, hold down the shift key, click again, drag and drop the whole kit and caboodle into ArcMap. Now you have all of the data that you'll be working with today. These will default to turn on. I have mine set to come in turned off or unchecked because I bring in a lot of big data sets, and if I open it right up it likes to crash. So when you are in data view, you can zoom in and out using the scroll wheel right on your mouse, and we're going to be working around here today. So this is Eagle Lake, Square Lake, Cross Lake, Mud Lake, Long Lake, with Fort Kent right here. You are right there in the armory. So this is one of the more accessible Maine Public Reserve lands to you. A lot of good fishing and hunting out here, accessed by boat from this boat launch here, or road via Slybrook. So first thing we want to do is get our page set up, because if we do not set up our page first and do that later, all of our annotations and locator map and all of that are going to get lost. So File, Page and Print Setup, and for this map, uncheck this Use Printer Paper Settings, give it a width of 20 and a height of 15. Okay. So that's that done. You don't see anything change because we're not in layout view right now, and right now we don't want to be. Let's go ahead and symbolize our different layers. Maine BPL ground, that's all the Maine Bureau of Parks and Lands data. Does not include the lakes because that's not part of their jurisdiction really. And this is currently showing as a default blue. We don't want that. So if you click once on the color swatch here, you can go to hollow and then change the outline color to this bright yellow, solar yellow. And that color shows up very well against an air photo. So that's showing our boundaries of Eagle Lake, and if we were to zoom out, we see all the boundaries of all the Maine Public Reserve land for the entire state of Maine. So we'll zoom back in here, and if we double click on Maine BPL ground, load, and we can check the box that says label features in this layer. And we want to use the project as the label field. That's the name of the thing. I'm going to set the size to let's do 16 and color again to yellow. So we're using yellow for the outline and yellow for the label. We're keeping those consistent so that the reader of the map understands that this label goes with this feature because they're the same color. Okay. So now we have Eagle Lake here, and we have two halves of this hole. So this is cut in half by this road, which is not part of the BPL ground. And if we double click on this again to go back to the labeling, we don't need two labels for this. It's the same thing, even though it's cut in half by a road. We can go to Placement Properties in the Labels tab and check Remove Duplicate Labels. Okay. And now it won't allow us to have two of the same label in one view, so that's better. Now because the water is obvious on the air photo, we're not actually going to use this Maine open water in this part of the map. So we are actually nearly there with these data. And let's check on the Maine boat launches GeoLibrary and turn that from its default little box there to square number 2. Okay. And that plops a square right at the location. I'm zooming in with my scroll wheel now. At the location of this boat launch, which is actually dead on the launch, which is kind of surprising. But there's where you park your car, where you park your trailer, and there's where you put in to access the lake. And if you're accessing public reserve land by water, there you go. So let's right click on that layer and zoom to layer, and that will show us all of the boat launches in the state of Maine, and likewise all of the Maine public lands, which are quite extensive. You would have to add another county's air photo if you want one of those, but you can see Round Pond with its boat launch. UMFK has a camp in here. There's Debooley with 4 boat launches. There's Allagash and a boat launch on the Allagash River. There's the boat launch on St. Froid Lake. This is a very nice one, actually. I've been out to fish in here, so highly recommend it. Access down through this road. This is the Red River Road, and it's a bit of a loop. This is all the same Red River Road. You just stay on the main drag, no turns. There you are. But back to Eagle Lake. So if we open up the attribute table here, we can see some details about these, whether they're carry-in boat launches, hardened, gravel, who owns it, whether it's state or local, whether it's freshwater or saltwater, tidal, whether it floats or not, Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, accessible or not. The blanks, I presume, are not accessible. So you have all this information if you need to know. Let's close that for now. We're actually not going to use the attributes to label this. We're just going to throw a text label in here. So now we have our Eagle Lake Public Reserve land marked in boundaries and labeled. And I think we're about ready to go over to Layout View now. So down to Layout View. And this is giving us the 8.5 by 11 page size that we started in with by default. We don't want that, so we can double click on Layers and go to Size and Position and make that 0, 0, and set the width to 20 as we did before and the height to 15. Okay. And now we're using the full space of the map, and we can no longer zoom in or out on the map information using the scroll wheel. If we do that, it's just getting closer as if we're bringing the page closer to our face, but it's doing nothing for the actual scale of the map. So we can use our zoom in, and that's got to be this one, not the zoom in that you have on your layout toolbar. It has to be this one over here. And click, hold, drag, release a box around the Eagle Lake area. And let's go ahead and do that one more time so we're zoomed right in. And let's go ahead and be somewhat precise about this. And this is a 1 to 36,000 scale map. So 1 foot on the ground would be 36,000 feet on the map. Or sorry, 1 foot on the map would be 36,000 feet on the ground. So let's go ahead and change that to an even number, 40,000, so we all end up with exactly the same map, or roughly. And that shows us our Eagle Lake, Square Lake, there's our road, there's this, and this is a good time to add in our other data, which is not the other data, but the other map, which is the locator map, which shows where in the world this is in relation to something that we're familiar with, in this case, Fort Kent. So we're going to go under Insert, Data Frame. And that is going to add a new data frame that we can add other data to show where we are. And you can move that around. You can click, hold, drag, release on that so we can see where we are. And we don't want to take up too much space there, so let's actually, if we want to move around the map information, we use this hand tool or pan. Click, hold, drag. So we have all of Route 11 coming down here, but just barely that, because this is what we're really interested in. So now if we double click on New Data Frame, see how it's hollow right now? If we put just a thin roads layer on here, it'll look like it's going on top of this air photo. We don't want that. So if we go to Frame and set the background to be white. Now hit OK, and now our new data frame has a white background. We can't move this around with a hand tool. We have to use this Select Elements. Now we can click, hold, drag, release, and go for a pretty square, even amount of space on each side. Now we can just drag data from up here to down here. And when you do that between data frames, it copies. It doesn't just move it from here to here. It creates a new version of that. Now that we've done that, we can actually right-click and remove that. We don't need it anymore. And we don't want this weird blue here, and we certainly don't want to be zoomed in or zoomed out that far. So if you click once on this, one of the default Esri symbols is just this blue. Click on that blue, and now it's a borderless feature, so it's not trying to draw the edge of the lake anymore, it's just showing the color. And when this is selected, you can use your zoom in tools just like normal. So this has to be bold before you do this, and to make it bold, you right click and say Activate. And that means when you zoom in, it's looking at these data and not these data. So now we can use our zoom in, click, hold, drag, and release a box. It'll draw again. Click, hold, drag, release a box around Eagle Lake. And now we're going to go and access one more data set, and that is not in our FOR 100 Lab 2. That's in Datasets for Student Use, Woods and Main Roads Outdated. I have this labeled outdated because the woods roads really are not kept up to date. and I don't want you getting the idea that this is something you can navigate by. So look for the SHP file, and this is the one you can just drag in on its own. So click, hold, drag, release, and plop it right above main water within the new data frame, just like that. And now open up the attribute table, right click, open attribute table. And this gives you all the data that live under here. It has no road name, nothing useful like that. But what it does have is class, and that's a ranking from 1 through 6 as to whether it's a major road, 1, or minor road, 6. So let's go ahead and check that on and see what that looks like. And it's taking a long time to load because there's a lot of data there. Now, this is way too much information to be useful, so let's go ahead and start narrowing this down. So I've double-clicked on this layer, and I'm going to go to the Symbology tab when this opens up, and I'm going to go to Categories. I'm going to select the value field class. I'm going to uncheck this box, all other values, and if I do that and hit apply, it's going to totally remove all of the roads. And I'm going to add values one by one until I have the data that I want. So add values and get the complete list. See, it's giving 2, 4, 5, and 6 for some reason. Ask for a complete list. It cycles through all of the values to find what we have available. Let's start with 1. Okay, there's 1. And I'm going to just hit apply, and adding 1 has done, it appears to be nothing. Now let's add another value, 2. Okay, apply. And we have no class 1 roads all the way up here. Class 1 is like Highway 95. We don't have that. Highway 11 is a class 2 road, but we don't have Sly Brook, which gets you down the other side here, so we're going to add that as well. So there's class 3. Apply there. Now we have Sly Brook, and we have 11, and both of those show us what we want. So I'm actually going to remove, I'm going to select and then remove class 1 because we just don't have that. I'm going to double-click on 2 and call that a major road. I'm going to double-click on 3 and call that a arterial street. It's not really that, but it's a good symbol for it, because Sly Brook is a much less well-maintained road than 11. 11 is a highway. Sly Brook is just sort of access to this side of Eagle Lake. So now I'm going to hit apply. If I like that, then I'm going to hit OK. You see it's taking a little while to finish drawing that because it is quite large. So it looks pretty similar in this zoomed out preview, but when you export this, it will be a substantial difference between 11 and Sly Brook. So I'm done with that, so OK. Next thing I want to do is add a extent indicator to this map, which shows the extent of this data frame on this other more zoomed out data frame. So I'm going to double click on new data frame, and I'm going to go to extent indicators. I'm going to click on layers. I'm going to click on this little arrow that knocks it over to show extent indicator for these data frames, and I'm going to hit OK. And now it has added or will eventually add a box showing exactly the extent of this map on this one. And that is interesting in that it has brought this in sort of in a canted position. And that is because it is in a different coordinate system. Let's see how to fix that right now, because that's a good thing to know how to do. So if I double click on new data frame and I go to coordinate system, it's showing this in NAD 1983 Alberes, whichever data set I brought in first must have had that data set. So what you want to do is go to projected coordinate systems and check this little plus sign. And you want to go to UTM, Universal Transverse Mercator. More on what that is later. go to NAD 1983, North American datum of 1983, and that is the reference point. More on that later. And you want to go to NAD 1983 UTM zone 19 north, which is the coordinate system that all of these other data sets are in. Hit OK. And that will have shifted everything so that north is straight up and everything's square. So this is what we want to see. We don't want to see that skewed view of things. So now we can also drag main BPL ground down to the new data frame, placing it between the open water and the roads. Now it doesn't show up very well when it's this hollow yellow over a white background, and we don't want this to be labeled because those labels just get in the way. So if we right-click on main BPL ground, we can check or uncheck label features, and that'll make that go away. If we click on this yellow swatch here, we can go ahead and use, instead of the hollow, let's just use the solid green with no outline. And now you can see the outline, the same shape of the Eagle Lake Main Public Reserve land. You can see Route 11, Slybrook. This is 161. And we have our boat launch here. Now all that's left to do, is add some labels. So this green is the boat launch, and we're going to give this boat launch a label in green. So we're going to use the drawing toolbar, click on the text with this selected. See how we have this little A with a plus sign here? Click once, and that will, if you look very closely, bring in a blank text. You can just type from here without doing anything else. Boat. I have my caps lock on. Boat launch. Enter. Now, using this Select Elements tool in the Drawing toolbar, if you click on that, when it's selected it shows in blue, and you can change the font size here. Let's make that 14, and change the text color to this medium apple green, matching that. So now we have the boat launch labeled. We can then add our other text. So we had, this was Old Main Street. Type in Old Main Street, or just street, period. Clicking on that again, we can change that to a size 12 and make our text yellow. You could pick another color if you felt like it, but that shows you where to make that turn to get to the boat launch. And then we can just repeat that for Route 11. Type in Route 11. And that is going to be size 16 because it's a little more important, and text color yellow because it shows up well. You could make that a red. Let's actually do that. Let's make our labels all red for our roads. So this bright Mars red we'll use. And this Route 11, it goes north-south. And this label would be better if it was rotated. So if you select this so it's highlighted in blue, you have this rotate tool. With that selected, click, hold, and drag, and release. And then you'll have that. You can move it around with select elements, drag, release. And I want that a little bigger, so I'm going to make that size 24. So there's Route 11, and that's actually Route 11 there, I'm sorry. I had that misplaced. So there's Route 11 coming in from the north. And that is the proper placement for that, not in here. So Slybrook is here, Route 11 is here. You can see Slybrook is much smaller. And let's get that so it's really aligned with that road. And now if we don't want to do all those steps again, we can select this and Control-C, Control-V. Move that over to here, double-click, and we can rename that Slybrook Road. Okay. And Slybrook is a little slightly different angle, so let's move that there. Align it a little bit. And now we have Route 11 and Slybrook Road. Then we want to add the information here that it is 8 miles from the top of this map to Fort Kent. Fort Kent. Enter. And you see that's gone black down there. You can just hit enter, 8 miles, so we have this on 2 lines. Select this center the text, and we can also change the size and color of things by going to change symbol. And let's make that size 24 and red. Okay, okay. Now we're saying Fort Kent 8 miles, and that did not justify by center. It didn't hear me there, so I'm going to click on that again. Okay, so now that's centered, so 8 miles is centered under Fort Kent. I'm going to place that right at the top so we know it's 8 miles to Fort Kent. Alright, so we have our boat launch, we have our roads. Now we need to label the lakes, and we're going to do that with text as well. Click on that, and that is Eagle Lake. And let's make that a size 36. And by convention, all water bodies are to be labeled with blue italics. So we can select italic, and then make the font color blue. So there's Eagle Lake. So we don't have to redo that formatting. You just copy, Control-C, Control-V, and then double-click on that, and that is Square Lake. Okay. You can rotate that like we did before, so it's aligned with the lake. Move it so it's centered. And now we have our lakes labeled. So we have our boat launch, a road to get to the boat launch, or access from Fort Kent 8 miles away, Slybrook Road if you want to access down this side. This obviously does not connect around. So finally we need a scale bar and a title. So insert, scale bar. And I like to just hit OK, see what it gives me, and then go from there. So there is my default scale bar. It's in feet. Or no, that's actually in meters. We don't want that. We're not Canadian. So let's double click on that. Wait for that to load up. And we do actually want this thing to have a frame, so it shows up behind here. So we're going to give it a background color white. We're going to give it a gap of 3 points, and this is going to give it a little extra space around the sides. Okay. So still in meters, but it's starting to look better. Double click on that to open it back up. And let's go for numbers and marks, scale and units. And when resizing, adjust width. We want the division units to be in miles, and we want the division value to be 2 miles. And we're going to make the number of divisions 5. So 5 times 2 is going to give us a scale bar 10 miles long, which is a bit obtrusive, but it shows you very easily that it's about 10 miles from here to here. But this has done something silly. It's given us 2 miles before the 0 and then 8 after. So let's fix that. Double click. And uncheck show 1 division before 0. And now I've got 0, 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 miles. So it's about 10 miles across. Now, the way I've got this located, we have a big blank space here. And we don't really want to jam the title in right there. So I'm going to put the title right up here in the center. That's going to be a final add text. And that's going to be Eagle Lake, misspelled, Eagle Lake, Maine Public Reserve Land. And let's go ahead and make that pretty big. Let's make that a size 72. And that's a bit big to fit all in one line, so we can double click on that and go to about the halfway mark and put that on 2 lines, center them, apply, OK. And as before, black doesn't show up that well, so let's change that symbol to a yellow text. So color, yellow. Okay, okay. So now we have a completed map, almost. We need to still label Fort Kent on here. So let's go ahead and label that with text, Fort Kent. And you could go farther on that and label Madawaska if you wanted to. You could label Citigat, Frenchville, Eagle Lake. You can label anything you want, but this is adequate to show the Maine Public Reserve land. Let's export that as a PDF. So File, Export Map. And save as type PDF. And we're going to set this to a resolution of 200 dots per inch. This is going to be Eagle Lake MP RL NT, so NT for my initials. And now we can check to make sure our georeference information is going with it. Hit save, and that will take a minute to draw, but when it finishes I'll open that up so we can see the difference between this preview that it gives you in layout view and how the finished product actually looks. Now this is something, as with other PDFs, you can email to yourself and bring that into your Avenza maps, use it for navigation, or this could be printed out as a wall map to show where Eagle Lake Public Reserve land is. Export complete. I'm going to go to my desktop where I saved this. And this is what the finished product looks like. So here's our boat launch, and we're looking at that at 57% zoom. So let's look at this at 100%. So this is the resolution you'd be working with as you're navigating, which is, I think, pretty good for navigation. Here's our locator map. And the dot that is you when you're using Avenza Maps will show up on this and not this, or it certainly should. So there is our map. Let's zoom out a little bit to show what we're really looking at here. So there's the completed map. You'll notice it looks a lot sharper than this preview. This is necessarily rough because it has to draw everything every time, and the finished product is a lot sharper. So now with this done, you can save it, and really should have saved this a long time ago because it will make you very sad when this crashes. You save this as your Eagle Lake and now you can use the hand tool to pan over to some other location, or you can go back to data view rather than layout view, so this goes a little easier. And if you left this activated, you'll be looking at this map instead. If you right click on layers again, this default first one, and activate that, you'll be back to your satellite image. So now you have the boat launches on here, you have all of this. You could do Dabuli, you could do down here there's no Maine Public Reserve land, but there's a public boat launch there. You could load in a different air photo, do one down where you're from if you want to. Pick any location, make yourself another map. So what you're going to do is upload two maps, one for Eagle Lake, just exactly like I made here, and then one of a location of your choice. And if you really want a map of something that's not public reserve land but is a boat launch, go for it. Doesn't matter that much, but once you've got all this stuff done, it's really easy to make a new map. So let's see if we're going over to, let's see, Long Lake here. If we pop back out to layout view, you'll see all of the text that we originally added. This is going to be a pain because we added text on here and it's going to be all over the place in the wrong place. So Eagle Lake no longer exists. You can either right click and delete, or hit the delete, not the backspace, but you see delete just over the arrow keys, delete. You can just move the boat launch label over to the boat launch. You can reuse some of these labels, remeasure the distance to Fort Kent, that kind of thing. You'll have to zoom around here, activate that data frame. You can zoom in, zoom out, do whatever you need to do to get Fort Kent or some other point of reference into here. Make your own map for that location, and from there, job done.